Hello, everyone. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. While we're talking, feel free to leave any questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try to get to them either while we're talking or we'll get to them after we finish the session. All righty. So I'm Betsy Beulah, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. I'm an all-remote evangelist here at GitLab, and GitLab is one of the world's largest all-remote companies. And I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And hi, I'm Steph Sarf. I am a recruiter here at GitLab, and I cover sales, marketing, and G&A. And I'm based in Portland, Oregon, but visiting family right now in Tacoma, Washington.
So we're going to get started by sharing some fun facts about GitLab. We've been an all-remote company since 2015, and today we have more than 1,300 team members across 65 countries around the globe. And we also can't forget about the 300 plus pets that are part of our team. So GitLab works with more than 100,000 organizations, and beyond our full-time employees, we also have more than 3,000 individuals who contribute to our product while they're using it for their own projects. And you'll see our mission at the bottom of this slide, which is that everyone can contribute. So I want to talk a little bit about GitLab's culture, because this is really one of the main things that drew many of us to the company. And it's really because our leadership team has truly taken that time to invest intentionally in building and scaling our remote culture. So as we continue to grow, we're really seeing that hard work pay off. And so many of the awards and recognitions, like the ones that you see here, are straight from our team members' feedback about how happy that they are at GitLab. We've also documented all of our remote practices, and we've created more than 50 guides at this point to share what we know with the world. So it's a really excellent resource for remote teams or anybody who is getting started in a remote role, no matter what company and where you are in the remote spectrum. And you'll also learn a lot there about how GitLab actually makes remote work work. So we'll talk about a few of those things today, but I'd really encourage you to check this out for yourself later. So I want to take a quick look here at the 5 main types of teams that are on the remote continuum. We've actually defined 10 of these in our handbook, but these are really the main buckets. So you'll see no remote and all remote on either side, and those are pretty self-explanatory. But you'll find that a lot of teams sort of fall somewhere in the middle. GitLab, as I mentioned, is an all remote team, and we have 0 offices. Even our CEO is based primarily in his home. So you might be wondering what is so unique about GitLab. Well, this list honestly was a little bit hard to boil down, but there are a number of things that we want to call out that really make this team and the culture unique. We've talked about how the team has been really intentionally built around remote work from the start, which is incredibly helpful to know as you're vetting a company as a place to work. And then at GitLab, really our values are kind of the basis of everything that we do. And so we'll talk about those next. And then there's asynchronous work, which is something that enables us to shape our work around our lives and not the other way around. We'll also talk about informal communication and the role that plays, as well as some of the ways that we are really building a diverse, inclusive team where everyone feels like they can belong. So let's look at our values. These are truly the most foundational piece to everything that we do as a team. So GitLab's 6 core values are here. We have collaboration, results, efficiency, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, iteration, and transparency. And together they spell out credit. So you'll see the hierarchy here of the values at the bottom of the slide as well. So it really helps us with our decision-making and everything that we do. And these are truly not words on a page. If you're like me, you might think that sounds too good to be true, but it's really how it works here. And we have sub-values that actually outline the behaviors associated with each of these values in our handbook. So you'll hear these mentioned in every meeting at GitLab, from individual contributors all the way to our executive group and the CEO. They're truly our North Star. So when we're considering things like hiring, for example, or promotions or bonuses, you'll see everything attributed to how someone is living out the values and whether they're doing that as a great example of our values. So you can find out more about our values by searching GitLab values, and you'll find our handbook page. Okay, so traditionally, people are pretty used to working synchronously. So in other words, they have to be in the same place, either physically or virtually at the same time. Asynchronous communication is the art of really eliminating meetings and synchronous work, making it possible to get work done on a flexible schedule. So at GitLab, we have a bias towards asynchronous communication, but it's actually really important to strike a balance between synchronous and asynchronous. And async at its core is really about documentation. So it's delivering a message in a way that doesn't require your recipient to be available or even awake at the same time. Async also is very freeing because it means you're not expected to respond immediately. So, for example, if a coworker or even your boss emails you on the weekend, just reply on Monday. It obviously, if something's urgent, then team members can ping each other, but it really prevents us from having to filter through information all the time. So I mentioned documentation, and a huge part of us working as an async team is having that centrally located, up-to-date handbook. We really have to rely on that single source of truth to operate efficiently. So at GitLab, our handbook is actually, if it was printed, more than 10,000 pages. So it truly holds everything that we do as a company, from processes to culture to how we want to communicate with one another. You'll find everything there. It's updated constantly, so any team member can contribute to it, no matter what your job title is. And actually, as a new team member, when you first join, part of your onboarding in your first week is to add to the handbook. So you're learning from day one. And again, feel free to check it out now. I actually pinned it in the chat, so you can find our link to our handbook there. One thing that's important about this is if you think about when you're in a co-located environment where everyone's in the same office, you might be used to just popping over to somebody's desk to ask a question or even picking up the phone to call them. But not only is that disruptive to that person's day, it really breaks down if someone's not in the office that day, or they're working a different schedule, or they're on PTO or something like that. So suddenly every question becomes a delay and every conversation takes longer. And it's just a huge contributor to burnout. So for us, working handbook first in that way is so freeing because it allows you to really have a self-service mindset. Now that we have talked about the magic of async, I want to get into everyone's favorite topic, which is meetings. And during the pandemic, it seems like a lot of companies that were suddenly forced to work from home immediately made every meeting that they would have had in person virtual. And that's just a fast track to Zoom fatigue and burnout. So at GitLab, we really try to change the mentality that meetings are necessary. We make all of our meetings optional, and every meeting has an agenda attached to it ahead of time. So this way our whole team is less reliant on being online at the same time, which works wonders across multiple time zones. It doesn't mean that nobody is going to show up to your meetings anymore, but if you are working towards a deadline and you really need that extra hour of focus time, or you have an obligation outside of work to attend to, you're able to contribute to the agenda ahead of time, ask any questions you might have, and then you can catch up async later. So I want to move on now to informal communication and how we do that at GitLab. If you've worked in an office before, you know there are tons of opportunities to chat and carry on non-work related conversations, like the water cooler chats that people always talk about. But for remote companies, there aren't any hallways for team members to run into each other. So that's why at GitLab, our leaders are very intentional about designing informal communication in a way that is engaging and involves everyone in whatever way they want to get involved. So informal communication also enables friendships to form at work. And that's really important because you're more likely to feel engaged and connected and, feel like you can really be part of the team if you have these relationships. So our goal as a team is really to design an atmosphere where all of our team members can feel comfortable reaching out to anyone about topics unrelated to work. For example, we have informal coffee chats at GitLab. So these are 30-minute sessions for two people to talk about anything at all except for work. And there are a bunch of other examples listed here of the ways that we do this and bond as a team. You can also find our handbook page on this if you search Informal Communication GitLab. Another way that we encourage people to bring their full selves to work is by having Slack channels for almost anything you can think of. So including hobbies or cities where people live. There's one for parents. There's one for each of our team member resource groups. There's channels for skill sharing. And as you see in this photo, there is one for dogs. So separating work and chat is just really something that's important, especially if you're working asynchronously. So we'll still mention some work things in Slack, but we make sure that any meaningful discussions are really happening in the GitLab tool in our case, but really anywhere that can be actually saved and referred to in the future. And actually, to help keep us honest with this, we even have our Slack messages automatically disappear within 90 days. So we put a lot of focus into building connections virtually because as an all remote team, that's how we spend most of our time. But there's also great value in gathering in person for relationship building. And we've listed some of the ways here that we do this at GitLab, including our regular company summit, which we call Contribute, events and conferences. We have visiting grants for team members who want to visit other team members, and then also local meetups and celebrations. The photo at the top right is actually a photo of our whole team at our last summit in New Orleans in 2019. And we have really missed this in-person relationship building and just being together as a team in the past year. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to gather again soon. And now I want to pass it over to Steph to keep us going.
Hello, thanks. So diversity, inclusion, and belonging is something that is just incredibly important at GitLab. It's not a part of our values. It's a part of just how we operate every day. And so these are some team member resource groups that we have here for our team members to ensure that, you know, they can have those sorts of conversations and feel a part of a larger supportive group here. We actually offer this as a part of our interview process too. So at the point of checking references, we check if any candidate that makes it to that point is interested in meeting with any members of these team member resource groups. So I think that also shows just how much we are living our values and giving that option to people as a part of the process too. Next is how we hire. And so we have intentionally crafted our hiring and talent acquisition practices to align with GitLab culture and our values. And that's something you'll hear us continuing to talk about that because again, you know, we don't just want to talk about our values, we want to live them. And so our recruiting team is all around the world. You know, like I mentioned, I'm in Portland. We have team members in London, in Austin, all over. And so I think that the emphasis we put on candidate experience also really sets us apart. The care that we have, you know, just for anyone who is meeting with us at any point in the process, I think is something that we don't take lightly. And so when you are meeting with us as a part of an interview process, we do ask an equal mix of STAR questions. And so those are situation, task, action, result. We want to hear how you go about solving problems, how you go about building relationships, how you collaborate. And so we focus heavily on those when we're interviewing from the very beginning, from the recruiter screen on. And then also, you know, asking specific questions just around skills and technical experience that help us get, you know, just a good sense of qualifications for the role, right? And so I think too, like we want to ensure that we're finding the best talent around the world. So it may take us more time and effort to do that, but it's definitely an effort that we are willing to make. And so that's a little bit about how we hire. We're also very happy to ask or answer questions that you all have about that too, but we'll go on to the next slide for now. We just wanted to highlight some of the general benefits that we have here at GitLab. I won't read through all of these, but you can definitely take a look. I think, you know, the no ask must tell PTO policy is I think that that's not just something we talk about, it's also something we live. And so I had actually a friend's mom tell me one time, she was like, there's no way that works. People cannot just take unlimited paid time off. I was like, it's real. Like, I use myself as an example. You know, I'm going out on a 3-week road trip in a couple weeks here. I'm going to do an equal mix of work and time off. And it's important to reset and take that time that you need to, you know, do the things that are important to you too. And we very much, like Betsy was saying, to have the friends and family first mentality. And I mean, I'm living that right now. I'm at home visiting my family. My brother just had the first grandbaby for our family. And so we're all very excited about that. So to be able to take the time, you know, work in the morning and go spend time with them this afternoon is just, it's so important to me. And so I just feel very lucky to work at a place that also values that. And so these are just some more general benefits though, but growth and development, you know, up to $10,000 a year for that, which is awesome. I think it might be, I may have gotten that wrong, but I'll double check on that. But I think it may be for the year or, you know, kind of tenured time at GitLab, but, you know, parental leave, all of that kind of stuff. But you can read through these. We have a full handbook page on all this too. And then we have entity specific benefits as well, just depending on where folks live. So these are just some interview tips for those folks who are interested in interviewing with GitLab and have applied. Thank you. But you know, these are just some suggestions that we put together for if you are interviewing with us. And so the first thing is the handbook is there, like use it. It has so much information that is valuable to interview processes, just to our teams. It's always up to date. Like Betsy said, it's our single source of truth. It's 2,000 pages. We know that. So we do not need you to read through the whole thing. I know it can be very overwhelming. You start to click links and like you end up somewhere that you didn't even know existed. So, but I would start with the team page and go from there. And really you can pop it into Google. Just say like sales development at GitLab. Boom, their page will come up. And then familiarize yourself with our values to ensure that they are in line with your own. And if possible, I would say be somewhere quiet with a solid internet connection. I think that's just helpful to kind of keep the conversation going. And we do use Zoom for our interviews because we do interview all around the world. So it's different from the very beginning conversation. I am face-to-face with people, which is great. And I think it allows us to create just stronger relationships as we go through interview processes too. Be on time. And I always suggest being a little bit early because technology is technology, and sometimes it can, you know, not agree with us. And so a lot of people will be like, oh, I had to restart Zoom. And so my suggestion there is just be a little bit early, make sure that, you know, logging in, all that kind of stuff, and that things are working. And then I would suggest preparing a few questions just specific to the company and the role that you're interviewing for. I always love just answering like, hey, you know, when it comes to the ideal candidate for this role, like tell me what the team's looking for, you know, what are some things that you would call out that maybe aren't exactly listed in the job description. And so I think things like that just help us have just more, you know, robust conversations about a role, the team, all that kind of stuff. And lastly, be yourself. You know, we are strong believers in that. I think I always start interviews and say like, hey, I treat this like a conversation. And because that's what it is. It's a two-way street. You are interviewing us as much as we are interviewing you. And it has to be a good fit on your side too. Company-wise, values-wise, role-wise, all of that. And so this is how you find out about roles at GitLab. So we are hiring. We have roles available in all of our, I kind of like to call these like our big umbrella departments, right? So the engineering world, G&A, marketing, product, sales, and you can check out that link, and that's where you can apply directly to all the roles that we have. We're continuing to grow, and it is an exciting time at GitLab, and I think that there's a lot of fun things happening. And you know, I always say like the roles I started about 2 years ago. I think I was number about 700. We're at almost 1,300 now. We've seen almost double growth since I joined 2 years ago. The roles that we're hiring for now, like maybe didn't even exist when I first started. And so I think that, you know, if there isn't something right now, please keep checking. You know, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn too. But I think that it's an exciting time for the growth that we are seeing. So please check that out and apply to the ones directly that you're interested in. And that's us. So please, like we mentioned, connect with us on LinkedIn. Betsy has a Twitter. I don't. Don't judge me. But I would say we are, let's jump into the Q&A. We're happy to answer your questions. I think we can have y'all put them in the chat, and then me and Betsy can just kind of take turns and answer those and just kind of have a conversation now.
So I've been kind of taking a look in the chat and the Q&A, and I've tried to add a few helpful links to answer some of your questions. It looks like there are several in the Q&A about specific, whether we're hiring for specific positions. And so I'd encourage you, I linked in the chat a link to our careers page. So that's a great place to start to see what our open opportunities are at the moment. And Steph, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, that's great. I would say that's where to start. If you're looking for a specific role, that's the first place I would check out is the jobs page and apply directly there. And then I'm seeing some questions too about, I'm looking in the chat now, and then I think after this, let's jump into the Q&A and maybe start at the bottom and like work our way up if that sounds good. Or start with the first question, I should say, but just about where we hire. And so I think that that's one thing. I will find a handbook page and put that in here just about where we're able to hire, which is mostly everywhere around the world. Unfortunately, there are some places that we're unable to hire just due to country law and things that are out of our control. But I will put that handbook page in here so y'all can take a look at where we hire and check that out. So give me 1 second while I put that in here.
I actually just popped it in there at the bottom.
Love it. Look at that.
The link in the chat will give you more details there.
Perfect. Awesome. So maybe let's see here. We can go to the Q&A if that sounds good.
Yes. And it looks like, let's see, we'll start with at the bottom. We've got Matthew with a question about product managers and what we're specifically looking for there.
Cool. So I don't see that one, but
Okay.
I thank you first for applying to GitLab and showing interest with us. What I would say with that, just because I don't hire specifically for product, I unfortunately can't shed like all the light on that. But I would say, I'm happy to take a look at your info. But I would say that just with the amount of applications that we get, just to be totally honest, it's really competitive. And I think for some of my roles alone, I've received more than 3,000 applications. So unfortunately, sometimes, right, we have to say no to awesome people. And so I think that I would give up, I would say that. So please apply to the product manager role, and we can definitely take a look at your info, but please be patient with us too as we review that.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see a couple of questions in the Q&A where people are asking if we're hiring for certain types of roles. So I think we sort of covered that with the best place, like one-stop shop for you to look there is our careers page. And I did link that in the chat, but I'm happy to drop it in again because I know there have been a few things come up since then. So let me share that here. So that's a great place to start to see all of our current roles. And I know, there are new roles being opened every day. So be sure that you check back, often so that you can see what the latest is. Mm-hmm. And then let's see. I see a couple of location questions. So that country hiring guidelines link that we popped in the chat will be really helpful to answer those. And you can refer back to it later. That's why we love our handbook. Mm-hmm. I see Will's question. Do we have non-tech related positions available? We have a ton. I'll let Steph speak to that because she hires for them specifically.
Yep. Yeah. Lots of those. So yes, CS, we are hiring a ton in CS right now in sales. CS is under our sales umbrella. So I would say, yes, check out those roles. They are all posted on our job board. And that is an area that we are heavily investing in right now. And then I also saw the question about creative roles like video editing, social media management, and writing. We don't have any specific positions for video editing and social right now, but I would say, right, that team, I think that there's going to be a need there. So keep an eye on the jobs page. While there isn't anything right at this moment, that could change. And so definitely keep your eye out there. What else
It
we
looks like
got?
there's a question
yeah.
here about the finance department, finance and accounting. So what I'm going to do is pop this link in the chat. This is our org chart. So it'll help you get a better idea of sort of like the structure of the teams and how all of that works. So we like to be sure we can transparently share that kind of thing with candidates. So I'd encourage you to check that out as well.
Yeah. And I would say, just from helping recruit for that team, one of their biggest challenges is just we're a changing environment, right? Like, so I think that just adapting to new process and just at the pace, I think, is just one thing that I've heard from that team, right? Just to be totally transparent about the things that they're kind of working with right now is that the pace and just kind of the changing environment.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I see, can non-EU and non-US applicants apply for remote roles? So we hire all around the world. So you can get more information about sort of like what country you're located in and how that works for a hiring list if you check out the link that I shared in the chat. And that's one of our biggest competitive advantages, that we feel like we are able to really hire a diverse team that's like authentically geographically diverse across the whole world. So it's a really cool thing to be part of a team like that. Let's see. So there's a question here. Is there any chance to be paid by cryptocurrency? So that's something I don't know the answer to. We'll have to circle back with our team and let you know if that's but that's not something I've ever seen in our handbook.
Yeah, I would say from what I know, it is, we pay based on where people live and the currency within their country is what I would say for that one.
Okay. Open UX roles, working knowledge of Figma, Sketch. Okay, Steph, I might pass that one to you.
Yeah, cool. I would say apply, right? Like, I think that's one thing. Our team can take a look at your information. And right now, because we're hiring a lot. And so our hiring managers are helping a lot too with application review. And so if it'll either be the hiring manager or recruiter who is reviewing your information. And so I would say, call it out in a cover letter. Tell us why, right? Like, your experience could make you a fit for this role. Even if you don't check off, we put in our job descriptions, like, don't let the confidence gap get in the way of you applying to this role. And we mean that, right? I think like for some roles, we do have to have a certain level of experience just with how quickly we need someone to ramp up in a role. But a lot of the time we can take a look at people's information and say like, hey, what do we have the capacity to train up on? What can we, bring someone on board? If there is a knowledge gap, is it something that we can take the time to get someone up to speed on, right? So apply. And then I see that about the possibility for an intern for HR. So right now we only have engineering internships. Last I saw, we had the application live out there for that, but we do not have any like a formal internship program right now. As GitLab grows, we are continuing to look into this and hope to bring on interns in every department across the organization. But for right now, we don't have a specific HR internship. But thank you for that question.
Awesome. So it looks like there's a question. I know we've got some coming in the chat too, so we're trying to moderate both.
Yes.
There's a question that's this interesting one about traits and characteristics of employees that are successful at GitLab. And I think this one's interesting. Steph, you add to this too, but the thing that we often think about is people who have sort of like that, they thrive with autonomy. So, we're an all remote team. We really have to all be managers of one and be able to not only manage our own time and our own projects, but really be able to achieve results, because that's what everything is measured on at GitLab. We don't care how many hours you're sitting at your desk or how many hours you're working. We care about your results. And so really being able to have that autonomy mastered is a huge thing when we're looking at candidates as they're coming in. and also a self-service mindset. So that's something, as you can see, that we're sharing handbook links right and left as we talk. And it's really something that we encourage people to do, even during the interview process, is to really digest what's in the handbook and try to, figure out if that self-service mentality is something that you would enjoy at work, because for us, it's very freeing. We're able to find the information that we need when someone else might not be online. If there's not something in the handbook, we find the answer to it and then we document it. So it's a very kind of self-fulfilling cycle where you're able to continuously, have access to all the information you need, but you really have to kind of want to work in that way. And the last thing I would say is, like we touched on our values, but that is a huge piece of the interview process. Like Steph talked about, it's, we look for people who we can tell buy into and really want to live out our shared values. And that's a huge piece of the interview process as well. Steph, what would you add there?
Yeah, I think that's all spot on. We were talking in a team meeting recently just about what do you think makes us all enjoy GitLab so much? And I think it is like the integration that we have found between the working and the living. Like you really live your life and you work, And so I think it goes back to all the things Betsy was mentioning too, just about the self-service mentality. Like the fact that we can Google a lot of things is like, it's pretty cool. If I can just, find a handbook page and input that, and have all the information right there. It is having a handbook first mentality, I think is something that it enables us all to do our jobs and do them well. And of course, like, are people available for questions? Yes. Like all of our Slack, Slack channels are public. And so if say like someone posts a question in like People Ops group, for example, someone from People Ops doesn't even need to answer that if someone else knows the question. We can all kind of chime in. And so I think it's, I would say the other thing too is like low ego. Like we don't have egos. And I think like in our values, we call out short toes. And so it's, not one of those things where it's like, we're not overstepping boundaries. We're not, it's a collaborative effort, really. I mean, when it comes to answering a question about benefits, right? Like we can all chime in on that.
Very, very true. I love, that's one of my favorite sub values is the short toes, because, in some companies you might experience sort of silos between teams where people are kind of protective of their work. And it's really just, it's such a collaborative environment internally at GitLab. So we all have short toes, meaning we're comfortable with everyone, stepping in and chiming in on a project we're working on, because we feel like that feedback will make us better. Let's see. There's a question. What is the best thing while working with GitLab? Steph, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah. The question was the best thing about working at GitLab?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I will be totally honest. I think that this is going to sound cheesy, but number one, I recruit for us. I am on back-to-back interviews almost every day. And I always say, like, I could not talk about GitLab all day long if I really didn't love being here. And I truly mean that. And I think that it comes down, we were just having a recruiting team meeting yesterday, and it was our quarterly meeting where we were all talking about just kind of the goals we've met and just all the collaboration efforts that, we've been able to achieve. And all of us were just having like kind of this like love fest with each other where we're like, I just appreciate you so much. And it really comes down to like just the amazing people who I get to work with. They are smart, they are kind, they like to get stuff done. They want to be here and they want to do, their roles well. And those are the kind of go-getters that like I love working with. And we work and then we also have lives. And so I think just the respect that all of us have for like our time zones, our bias for async communication, like all of that matters. And it makes you feel like you are a part of just an awesome group that has like the same mission in mind. And so that's what I would say. And I mean, truly, like, this is how we build relationships. Betsy and I have never met in person like that. It's so funny, but we know each other so well. And so it's just, I think the intentionality too, that we all have around like building authentic relationships, like outside of like work conversations too, like we were saying about with the coffee chats and all of that. It just makes you feel like you belong, right? And I do new hire check-ins with people who have been here for 4 weeks, and I always say, I'm like, okay, like, is it all it's cracked up to be? Like, are you enjoying yourself? Like, what are the pros, the cons? And I just love those conversations because they really give so much insight into just what people have learned so far, how they're, if all remote is new to them, right? I know in the last year, we all kind of were forced to go that way, but it's interesting just hearing kind of what people's like take is, and it's overwhelmingly positive. So that's a plug for ourselves, but that's those. I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's what I would say.
I love it. And you've covered pretty much everything that I would say. But the one thing I want to call out is something you mentioned about the past year. And I think that's an important thing, because a lot of people would see an all remote company and say, well, you were set up for this in the past year. But really, like, the past year has been an experience of everyone being forced to work from home during a global pandemic. So it's a totally different thing from typical remote work that all of us are used to. But it was really cool to watch our leadership at GitLab really step up and say, hey, we know this is not a normal experience for anyone. Some people have their kids at home constantly. Some people live alone and they're feeling an unprecedented level of isolation. And so I think having that recognition and the team like jumping in to support each other and put in new policies and things to help team members through this time has been another reason that I was just really proud to be part of GitLab. We started something that's called Friends and Family Day, where once a month since the pandemic began, we've had one day off where the entire team is offline. And so you're really encouraged to go do something that you love or hang out with people you love if it's safe to do so. And take that time away, because the bottom line is we're not going to be productive and great at what we do if we're burnt out and, struggling with that kind of thing. So it's been cool to see the team really band together over the past year too.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got there was a question about I'm going back to the chat now. I'm kind of popping back and forth.
Yeah.
Can we refer to any handbook pages? This is from Emily, that describe the application reviewing process. I see sections for conducting interviews, but not previous steps in the recruitment process. Steph, I don't know if you can think of a page where we could link to that, but that might be something that we have on the interviewing page.
For sure. And so, yes, I've seen a couple questions in here about screening applications through ATS and all of that. So I can give a couple, tips there. So, but yeah, reviewing applications. I actually don't know if anything is like posted about that in the handbook. And that's something, that's a good call out, because I can bring that to my team and just say, hey, like, people are interested in learning how we review applications. And so if it's not in the handbook, we can get it in there. But I would say for kind of when we start to look at applications, right, like I mentioned, like there are some where we do get 3,000 applications. And for those, we just for efficiency, which is also one of our values, we do maybe do keyword searches, right? So if there's like specific things that we're, specific skills or programs or, things like that we want people ideally to have for the role, we'll start there. And so search our ATS for those keywords. I would say for most of my roles, I think probably, I don't know what the average number is, but, say there's 30 applications in there, I review all of those. There's a real person reviewing those. And so my recommendation there is always submit, if there are application questions, fill those out, like put in some time to look at those and see what we're asking. I think that's always really helpful. I will be honest, I know people say that cover letters like maybe are a thing of the past, but I read them. I really do. And so I think that if I can see that enthusiasm for someone who has taken the time to write a GitLab specific cover letter, like it's awesome to read those and see why someone is interested in this role and why they think their experience could match up. And so at a high level, that's what I would say about application review. Ideally, so it is a partnership between our sourcing team and our recruiting team and our hiring managers. And so we all kind of have a little bit of different workflows for how we review those, but that's the team that's reviewing them. And I would say ideally we get back to people within like 2 weeks. Sometimes it does take us a little bit longer if we have seen an overwhelming amount of applications, but we do our best to get back to folks, as soon as we can.
Okay, there was one more question I saw. I know we're getting close to time. So
Yeah.
there was one I saw about that a few companies are moving to 4 work days a week. Any thoughts on that? So what I wanted to share there, we are very autonomous in how the whole team kind of shapes their work days. So I mentioned that asynchronous communication really allows us to do that, but it's something that sounds, I think when you're, before you join GitLab, you think that sounds too good to be true. But it actually, it's really encouraged throughout the company. Like if you are getting your work done, that's the primary concern is your results. And then, you know, if you want to work asynchronously and be able to have a nonlinear work day where you work for a few hours in the morning and you take breaks throughout the day to do things that you love or spend time with your family, that's totally encouraged. So while I love the idea of something like a 4-day work week, I think that's something, you know, at GitLab that we want to be sure that people like feel empowered to be able to, you know, shape their day in the way that works best for them and their team and their specific role. So, you know, it's not something that we've been prescriptive about in that sense, but that combined with our no ask time off is also another important piece that you're really able to take the time that you need when you need it. And knowing that your work is documented in the handbook or in the GitLab tool, your team can still move forward when you're out. So it's not as stressful of an event as it might be in another company. Let me see if we can, let's see.
Question in here about doing an interview with just audio. And yes, that is totally okay. So yeah, that is one thing where I would say, like, if you know, recruiter reaches out and is like, hey, schedule time, that's just information. Send that back to us, request that, all good with us.
Another one about efforts GitLab makes for diversity and inclusion. So Steph covered that a little bit, but I think what I would recommend is checking out, I'm going to talk while I find this page. This page covers everything in such detail that it's a really great resource. I am going to share it here. And so I would encourage you to check that out because in addition to, like, Steph talked a lot at a high level and talked about our team member resource groups, but there are a ton of initiatives that we're taking with diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And it's really infused into everything that we do. So, you know, we could go have an entire session, I think, about that.
Yeah.
But it's something that at every level of the company, everyone is very focused on and is being prioritized. So that page will give you a great idea of how it's sort of infused into everything that we're doing across the company. And so I know we're getting right at time. So what we would love to do is have anyone whose questions didn't get answered, check out our booth in the expo. We have a chat there, and Steph and I and potentially other people from our team will be checking in throughout the rest of the event to answer any questions. So please take a look there. We've got a video and some resources shared in the booth. And as you have more questions that might come up after the session, we can add more links or answer them directly. And we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Everyone enjoy the rest of the event. Bye.